People often think that the thing the narcissist fears most is your anger or exposing their true colors. In reality, that's not the case. They are not afraid of exposure or criticism. In fact, they feed off it. This is because, to them, no matter how you react, whether with joy or despair, it is the clearest proof that they still hold a significant place in your soul. Every tear you shed, every message you try to send, or every night you agonize over them, all of it is the lifeline, the sustenance that nourishes the pretentious ego they have spent a lifetime concealing. Then, one day, everything changes. You suddenly realize you are no longer shedding tears, no longer feel an ounce of rage, and are no longer anxiously waiting for a hopeless explanation or apology. Your emotion now is simply emptiness, serenity. This quiet moment, which you perceive as peace, actually turns out to be a silent tremor that shatters the manipulator's internal world. For them, this silence is not just cutting off contact, but the most terrifying loss of power. They cannot manipulate a person whose emotions have cooled, nor can they control someone who holds no more hope. And the most brutal truth arrives. You have decisively walked out of the script they assigned to you. You are not yelling, not begging, and you no longer need to prove your strength. It is the fact that you are no longer making an effort that defeats them. It is not because you hate them, but because you have healed. The silence is not a tactic, but because there is truly nothing left to say. And for the narcissist, your internal calm is a mortal blow. They are not afraid of losing you, but afraid of losing the reflection of their own self, a grand image that you once provided for them. In today's video, we will together dissect the 8 stages of narcissistic collapse when they realize you no longer care. From the stages of denial, attempts to regain control, rage, truth distortion, to emptiness and identity collapse. Every stage reveals one thing: you don't need revenge to win. You simply need to no longer belong to them. Please continue watching to fully understand these profound psychological developments. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel to receive more in-depth psychological analysis content, helping you heal and reclaim control of your life. Following the powerful moment of your silence, when the mirror reflecting them suddenly turned away, the narcissist plunges into the first stage, denial, a nearly instinctive defense mechanism. For them, the fact that you are no longer texting, no longer responding, and no longer present in their world in the old way is utterly unacceptable. In the narcissist's distorted universe, you cannot truly stop caring. You are a valuable source of supply, their irreplaceable audience. They are far too accustomed to you always coming back, always yielding, or at least struggling in misery. Therefore, instead of confronting the pain of loss, the first thing they do is rewrite reality to protect their crumbling sense of control. They tell themselves, "They're just testing me. This is just a ploy to make me chase them," or "They are waiting for me to back down." In their mind, your silence cannot be an ending. It must be a move in the emotional game they believe they are still winning. This belief does not stem from love, but from the illusion of absolute power. As denial takes hold, they begin to test the waters subtly. Vague signals appear on social media, an implicitly loaded post, a sudden melancholic story, or a simple, casual message like "just checking in." They might even show up in places they know you will be. Every action is a psychological test, not because they miss you, but because they need to prove they still have the power to influence you. But when you maintain your silence, showing no anger, no emotion, and offering no response, that denial begins to crack. Uncertainty and the question, "Wait, is this real this time?" begin to seep into their minds. They cannot accept a reality that doesn't revolve around them, so they double down on their efforts, setting more emotional traps. However, your true freedom and peace have made them begin to feel lost. No more mirror, no more emotional feedback. This is more than losing an ex. This is losing the magnificent stage where they were always the sole star. They are not ready to leave that spotlight. When denial is no longer sustainable, the narcissist shifts to stage 2, reasserting control. And this is when they take decisive action. No more vague signals, Now they deploy calculated strategies to pull you back into their orbit. In their mind, your departure is not an act of independence, but a power vacuum that must be filled immediately. They will try every trick that once worked, sweet and desperate messages, invoking beautiful memories of the early days, love bombing, dramatic apologies, or promises of a sudden awakening. But you need to understand clearly, this is not genuine remorse. It is desperation driven by the fear of losing their grip. For a narcissist, love has never been about connection, but about domination. When you stayed, they could manipulate. When you were angry, they could recalibrate their strategy. When you pushed back, they could play the victim to reclaim dominance. But when you have no reaction at all, you completely sever their loop of domination. This sends them into a state of panic. At this stage, their behavior can wildly fluctuate. One day, it's a tender message. The next, it's anger or blame, accusing you of being cold and cruel. All of it is aimed at finding the smallest emotional opening they can exploit to drag you back into being their mirror. They don't need you to return out of love. They just need you to react. Because your reaction confirms they still exist in your mind. Without it, their ego begins to collapse. The calmer you are, the more chaotic they become. The greater your silence, the louder their internal screaming grows. Regardless of whether they post happy photos or flaunt a new person, it is merely a hastily constructed mask to conceal the truth. They no longer control you. Deep down, they know the tricks that once worked are now useless. They are flailing in desperation, trying to tug on a rope you have completely let go of. And they are not ready to face the fact that this time, you didn't just pause, you let go, stripping away the only foundation they relied on to feel valuable. When the wall of denial crumbles beneath your steadfast silence, the narcissist has no choice but to transition into stage 2, reasserting control. The era of vague, probing signals is over. They now resort to cold, calculated strategic action. In their mindset, your withdrawal is not an act of autonomy, but a power vacuum that must be filled at all costs. They believe that by applying the correct maneuvers, they can still pull you back into their orbit as before. They begin to reenact the charming play of the past. Messages become unbelievably sweet. They invoke cherished romantic memories, or offer dramatic apologies and fervent promises of change, as if they have suddenly experienced a waking up. This is a peak performance of concealed desperation, entirely devoid of genuine remorse. Their greatest fear is not losing you, but losing an effective tool of control. Throughout the relationship, love was never a genuine connection. It was a means of manipulation. When you were still angry, they could adjust their strategy. When you resisted, they could instantly play the victim to regain advantage. But when you offer no reaction whatsoever, you completely sever the manipulative loop they once reigned over. Your serenity is what causes them profound panic. In this stage, you will witness their most chaotic emotional swings. Today they might send a tender, loving message. Tomorrow, it's intense anger or harsh blame, accusing you of being cold, cruel, or heartless. All these behaviors are solely aimed at finding an emotional crack, the slightest sign of weakness that they can exploit to drag you back into being the reflecting mirror for their ego. They don't need love, they only need a reaction. Because every reaction confirms their continued existence and influence in your mind. When you cease responding, their brittle ego begins to disintegrate. The greater your silence, the more frantic their internal screaming becomes. Even if they try to smile in public, post happy photos with a new person, it is all just a fragile mask hurriedly constructed. They know clearly that the tricks that once worked are now useless. They are floundering in desperation, trying to tug on a rope you have already completely released. This leads to a harsh truth. This time, you didn't just pause, you let go permanently. This action not only ended a relationship, but also stripped away the sole foundation the narcissist relied upon to feel valuable. When every tactic fails, and every manipulative effort is neutralized by your indifference, the narcissist has nowhere left to hide. From here, their external composure begins to shatter, and a terrifying internal storm erupts, marking the transition to stage 3, rage. This is not the anger born of a broken heart, but the fury of someone who always believed they had the right to dominate, now forced to confront the unacceptable truth. You no longer need them. In their wounded mind, the real question isn't, "Why did you leave?" but "How dare you live well without me?" Your independence is seen as the ultimate betrayal, completely collapsing the illusion of power they had built. This is the moment the destruction shifts from trying to pull you back to controlling the narrative about you. When every desperate attempt to pull you back, regain control, or manipulate fails and is completely nullified by your silence, the narcissist plunges into stage 3, rage. This is the most dangerous and bitter stage because it is not an outburst stemming from the pain of loss, but the feverish resentment of someone who always considered themselves the center of the universe, now forced to confront an unbearable truth. You have genuinely moved on without them. In their distorted belief system, you have no right to autonomy or to thrive after leaving them. Your peace and independence are viewed as the ultimate act of rebellion, not only challenging their authority but shattering the illusion of absolute power they meticulously constructed. This rage is more than mere screaming outbursts. In fact, many narcissists will not exhibit their anger publicly. Instead, they pivot to more covert and subtle paths of destruction. They begin to spread rumors, twist the facts, and perfectly play the victim in the eyes of others. In their new narrative, you are portrayed as the cold, heartless individual who abandoned them cruelly and without cause. Their primary goal at this stage is no longer to bring you back, but to salvage their image, especially in the eyes of new audiences and, more importantly, in their own fragile perception of reality. Since they cannot control you, they switch to controlling how others perceive you. In the narcissist's worldview, if they cannot be seen as the most loved, they will settle for being seen as the most hurt. Whether playing the hero, victim, or martyr, the core objective remains to maintain control of the story. This rage can even push them toward temporary self-destructive behaviors. They might live recklessly, rush into shallow relationships too quickly, or spend extravagantly, all in a desperate attempt to escape the internal emptiness that is closing in on them. But throughout this chaos and destruction, one truth continues to stab at them like a silent dagger. You no longer react. For the narcissist, this is unbearable. In the past, a cold glance or a tiny emotional response from you was enough to make them feel real, to remind them they still held sway over your emotions. But now, you don't look, you don't speak, you don't feel anything. To the narcissist, that is not just your absence, it is total erasure from their emotional universe. And when their rage fails to move you as hoped, the narcissist shifts to a new strategy, marking the beginning of stage 4, rewriting the narrative. If they cannot control you through emotion, they will control the story about you. They revise the script, creating a distorted version where they are the noble victim, and you are the inexplicably cold, ungrateful villain. For the narcissist, the truth is irrelevant. The only thing that matters is a version of reality that can spare them from the feeling of failure and the impending ego collapse. Because you did not give them a satisfying ending, no begging, no return, no tragic closure, they write their own ending in a way that completely absolves them of blame. You might have loved them deeply, forgiven them repeatedly, and tried to fix things you never broke. But in their new retelling, you are the one who suddenly disappeared, the emotionally unstable one, the control freak, or even a covert manipulator disguised as kindness. Every act of your love, every pain you endured, is twisted to serve one single purpose, to make them look pitiful and you look wrong. Why do they do this? Not for revenge, but to protect the fragile ego that is fracturing daily without someone there to validate it. They cannot accept that you left because you had reached your limit. They cannot stand the fact that you are living in peace, happy, and completely failing to mention them, because that would mean they are no longer important, and for a narcissist, insignificance is worse than hatred. They need a narrative to fill that void. They need others to look upon you with suspicion, Not because you matter to them, but because the narcissist cannot tolerate being forgotten. However, there is one thing they did not anticipate. You have completely stopped reacting. You do not defend yourself, do not correct the story, do not rush to clean up the mess they've made of your reputation. And it is that unemotional silence that wounds them more deeply than any confrontation ever could. When you no longer fight to protect your image, you have entirely stepped off their game board. And no matter how many versions they rewrite, the narcissist cannot recreate the mirror that once reflected them so clearly as you did. When all the tricks and scripts are exhausted, when your serenity has shattered their last stronghold, the narcissist is forced to confront stage 5, emptiness. After all the desperate attempts, the denial, the rage, and the rewriting of the story, they are now left with an internal abyss they have spent their entire lives avoiding. There are no more gazes to control, no more emotions to exploit, no more reactions to feed upon. They begin to sink into a bottomless pit that no amount of external supply can fill. The core nature of the narcissist is an inability to build identity from within, unlike emotionally mature individuals. They exist entirely through reflection from the outside. How others see them, attention, admiration, even contempt. Every reaction from you was proof that they still carried weight, that they mattered in someone's world. But when you quietly turn away, without a trace, not with love, not with anger, but not even with indifference, they feel as though they are being erased from reality. This is no longer the pain of a broken relationship. This is a full-blown identity crisis. The narcissist begins to grapple with the seemingly simple question that becomes an abyss. Who am I when no one is telling me who I am? It is a question without an answer, because they never truly knew who they were. They only knew themselves through what others reflected. He's charming, she's admirable, they're powerful. When you walk away without explanation, that mirror disappears. They start to feel invisible. There is no one left to make jealous, no one left to play the victim to, no one left to compare their new partner with. All the scripts, the emotional dramas they once successfully directed, are now playing out on an empty stage, without an audience. And in that terrifying silence, for the first time, they feel something they don't have the language for: non-existence. A cold, drifting, disconnected feeling, as if every mask they ever wore has fallen away, revealing a void they neither recognize nor can make sense of. You, the one who once saw them most clearly, are now no longer seeing them at all. And in the eyes of any new person, they are just a recycled performance, lacking depth, lacking real connection. And that is what drives them mad. Not that you left, but that you once truly saw them and still chose to walk away. This emptiness cannot be filled with material things, praise, or fleeting replacement relationships. Because the problem is not who is standing next to them, it is that they are no longer standing within themselves. The terrifying emptiness of stage 5 propels the narcissist into stage 6, the search for a replacement. When the mirror you once held shatters and can no longer reflect them, they never consider looking inward. Instead, they immediately and desperately hunt for a new mirror, a new person, a fleeting relationship, or a fresh target for manipulation. This is a frantic, shallow, and highly tactical hunt, as the sole purpose is to fill the deep void of the identity crisis that surrounds them. Never mistake this behavior for them moving on. On the contrary, their rush into the arms of someone else is the clearest evidence that they cannot bear to be alone with themselves. The new person, often referred to as new supply, or the replacement, is selected not for love or compatibility, but for their ability to reflect what the narcissist needs at that moment. Unwavering admiration, absolute attention, and above all, the ability to make you, the ex, jealous. The narcissist will flaunt this new relationship publicly, across all social media platforms, and in every conversation, as a meticulously calculated strategy. This is a two-pronged attack. First, it helps them reassure the world that they are fine, still desirable, and irreplaceable. Second, It is a psychological strike designed to provoke a reaction from you. They hope you will feel jealousy, pain, or at least send an inquiring message, thereby securing a steady flow of free emotional supply from both sides, from the new person's admiration and from the ex's pain. However, this new relationship is merely a temporary painkiller. The new person can never fill the void that was deepened by your profound understanding. You saw through them, and you once accepted their flaws. The new person only sees the perfectly polished version the narcissist has just rebuilt. When this honeymoon phase ends, when the new person begins to notice the cracks, the narcissist faces the risk of losing supply yet again. After the frantic attempts to replace you, stage 6, and when the final hoovering attempts are neutralized by your sustained silence, the narcissist enters the most terrifying state of all. Stage 7. Ego collapse. This is no longer a fleeting emotion or a surface-level tantrum. This is a deep internal unraveling, a kind of existential confusion for which they have no language and even less capacity to face. The reason this collapse is so devastating is that the narcissist never built a real self. Since childhood, they learned to survive by reacting to how others saw them, not by developing an inner dialogue. Their self-worth was measured by how well they could control, please, or manipulate others. Now, with you, the person who once reflected them most authentically, no longer part of that equation, they are faced with the unanswerable question, who am I if there is no one left to control? The narcissist's inner world becomes utterly hollow, like a room with no mirrors, no windows, and no light. All the masks that once made them feel powerful, the seductive lover, the wounded victim, the successful powerhouse, are now useless without someone there to validate them. They fall into a crisis like a lost child, yet lack the emotional maturity or vocabulary to name the pain. They may still try to keep up appearances, going to work, smiling in public, posting cheerful photos. But their eyes begin to look empty, their behavior grows distorted, sleep becomes shallow, panic attacks may creep in, and perhaps worst of all, they begin to not recognize themselves in the mirror. Not literally, but psychologically. They look and see emptiness, no identity, no meaning, no center. This is a quiet collapse. And because narcissists are not allowed to appear weak in the world they've constructed, they cannot ask for help. They will not say, "I'm not okay," because doing so would require a stable sense of self, strong enough to admit vulnerability. And without an inner foundation, they have no idea how to piece themselves back together. The pain they are feeling now does not come from you. It comes from the void your absence has left behind. A space once filled with your gaze, your emotions, and your sincere presence, things they never truly knew how to value. Now, they cannot find that same depth in anyone else, and they certainly cannot create it within themselves. This is the moment when the brutal truth finally reaches them. It's not that they lost you, it's that they never truly had themselves. All of this leads to a cruel and highly contrasting conclusion, which is stage 8, the quiet ending. Finally, when every tactic has been exhausted, every role has fallen apart, and there is no one left to continue the game, the narcissist is confronted with a conclusion they never prepared for, the silence of their own making. However, the difference lies here. Your silence brings peace and rebirth. Their silence is permanent stagnation. While you walked away with a heavy but determined heart, learning to rebuild yourself with truth and dignity, they remain endlessly spinning in the same loop: manipulation, reaction, control, blame. You are no longer there, no longer answering, no longer hoping or wishing they would finally understand. It is at this moment that they feel, not with their mind, but in their deepest intuition, that they have lost the one thing that once made them feel truly seen. But the cruel truth is they will never admit it, not to you, not to anyone else, and perhaps not even to themselves. Because admitting it would mean confronting a truth more painful than being abandoned. They were once genuinely loved, and they destroyed it with their own inherent lack of self. Meanwhile, you, the one who was once broken, once lost, who once handed your whole heart to the wrong hands, have now found yourself again, not through revenge, not through their apology, but by decisively letting go of something that never truly existed, the version of them they never had the courage to become. You walked away without needing to win, without needing to perform a final scene, without needing anyone to applaud, because you realize that the real victory is not making them understand, it is no longer needing them to. And the narcissist, no matter how much they smile for someone new, boast of accomplishments, or repaint their image, will remain stuck in the same old story, a story where their most loyal audience has left the theater, and the stage will never be lit as brightly again. You do not defeat a narcissist with words or teach them a lesson through anger. You do not need their admission to heal. The real victory happens in the quiet moment when you walk away and never look back. That is not coldness. It is because you have outgrown the game they created. You loved, you forgave, you once believed that if you were good enough, they would change. But eventually, you realized that no one can heal a person who refuses to face themselves. And so, you made the bravest choice of all, to let go without needing a response. In the narcissist world, that is collapse. In your world, that is rebirth. You are no longer controlled by someone else's emotions, no longer defining your worth through their gaze. You stepped out of their script, into the light, and began writing a new story, where you are finally the main character. They may never understand why you left. They may never acknowledge the truth you once offered, but that no longer matters, because you no longer need validation from someone who only ever saw you through your reactions and never through your soul. The peace within you is the answer, not for them, but for you, the one who walked out of the darkness, scarred but standing tall, and chose to keep going. While the narcissist remains perpetually consumed and stuck in the old story they created, you, the one who was once broken and lost in the labyrinth of manipulation, have now completely rediscovered your authentic self. This journey required no revenge, nor any belated apologies from them. Your victory lies in decisively letting go of the illusion of a version of them they never had the courage to become. You walked away not to win a war, nor did you require a dramatic closing act, because you have grasped a profound truth. The real victory is not forcing them to understand. It is no longer needing them to understand. The narcissist will forever remain imprisoned in their own play, where their most loyal audience has abandoned the theater. You did not choose to defeat them with words or anger. Your absolute triumph resides in the moment of total silence when you turn your back and never look back. That is not cold indifference. It is a sign that you have matured far beyond the toxic game they constructed. With extraordinary courage, you made the ultimate decision, to release all attachments without needing any response. In their distorted world, that is a devastating collapse. But in your life, it is a powerful rebirth. You have stepped out of the painful script, moved into the light of freedom, and begun writing a new chapter where you are the protagonist in charge of your destiny. You no longer seek validation from someone who only saw you through superficial emotional reactions, but never truly saw your authentic soul. The deep peace within you is the complete answer, not to prove anything to them, but to affirm your own self-worth. The narcissist lost you the moment they tried to control you, and you found yourself the moment you stopped trying to decipher them.